11 years ago, a young girl vanished without a trace during a family vacation, leaving her loved ones shattered and desperate for answers. Then, out of nowhere, her name appeared on an old reservation list, sparking a chain of events that would change everything. What really happened to her? Join me as we unravel this unforgettable story together. Before we get started, let me know where you're watching from and leave a comment down below. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Now, let's begin. There are certain summers we hold on to for the rest of our lives. Not because of the warmth in the air or the laughter that echoes across water, but because of the stillness that follows when something disappears and never comes back. The Callahan family arrived at Lake Elmore on the first weekend of July, 2014, just as they had planned for months. It was a picturesque spot nestled in the green hills of Vermont, where time moved gently and families like the Callahans came to reconnect. Tom and Elaine had hoped the trip would bring a little peace after a difficult year. Tom had been working long hours. Elaine was managing 2 part-time jobs, and their 2 children, 16-year-old Jack and 9-year-old Lily, had become increasingly distant in their own ways. Jack was glued to his phone. Lily, quiet and dreamy, spent most of her time sketching birds or pressing wildflowers in her notebook. Lake Elmore was supposed to be a pause, a reset, a place where the family could just be. That afternoon, the sun was high and golden, catching glints of light on the ripples of the lake. Lily had asked for a mint chocolate chip cone from the small lodge counter near the docks. Tom handed her $5, ruffled her hair, and told her to be quick. She grinned with that gap-toothed smile and skipped off barefoot across the soft gravel path, her red summer dress swaying behind her. It was only 100 yards. A straight line from a lakeside bench to the wooden lodge, a route Lily had taken earlier that morning with no trouble. But that was the last time anyone in her family saw her. Minutes passed, then 20, then 45. Elaine grew restless and went to check the lodge. The clerk said a little girl had come in, but he wasn't sure what time. There were always kids coming and going. No one remembered seeing Lily leave. Tom checked the lake. Jack ran up and down the trails near the cabins, calling her name. But there was no reply, only the hush of wind in the trees and the distant buzz of boat motors on water. Within hours, the area was swarming with local authorities, volunteers, rangers from the nearby Forest Service, and even tourists who gave up their leisure time to help search. Helicopters scanned the woods with thermal cameras, divers combed the shallow edges of the lake, and search dogs were brought in to follow her scent. But it ended quickly, too quickly. By the second day, the trail had gone cold. No footprints beyond the gravel. No dropped belongings. No screams heard. No struggle reported. Lily had simply vanished, as if the earth had opened up beneath her and closed without a sound. The media arrived the next day. News vans lined the road leading into town. Cameras captured Tom holding up a photograph of Lily in front of the resort's main sign, his voice cracking as he pleaded for information. Elaine refused to speak on camera. She sat on the edge of the dock for hours, staring into the still water, as if expecting it to give her daughter back. Jack wandered aimlessly, swinging between anger and numb silence, blaming himself for not going with her, not insisting to walk her back, not watching more closely. He would carry that weight for years. Tips flooded the sheriff's office, some from psychics, others from people who thought they saw her in gas stations or diners 2 towns over. Each lead led nowhere. By the end of the second week, the local news began covering different stories. A booting accident, a 4th of July parade. Lily's case slipped from the headlines like a dream dissolving on waking. The Callahans stayed another week, refusing to leave the lake, refusing to believe this was the end. But it was, at least, that's what everyone told them. By summer's close, the lake returned to its gentle routine. Families still vacationed. Children still played by the water. But the Callahans were never the same. They returned home without her. Elaine packed away Lily's things and couldn't bear to touch them again. Tom stopped fishing. Jack withdrew into himself, quiet and sullen, burying his grief beneath sarcasm and headphones. Their once bright home grew silent, heavy. The laughter disappeared. The music stopped playing in the kitchen. Dinners grew cold from being left on the stove untouched. And those seasons passed and calendars turned, Lily's absence never softened. People try to be kind. They said the right things. Time heals. You have to move on. But some losses calcify. They become part of your bones. The Callahans drifted apart, physically, emotionally, in every way that mattered. Tom and Elaine separated in 2016 and divorced a year later. Jack graduated high school and moved across the country for college, rarely coming home. The space Lily once filled stayed empty, like a light bulb burned out in the hallway no one had the heart to replace. Still, on the anniversary each year, Elaine would go back to Lake Elmore alone. She would rent the same cabin, walk the same path to the lodge, sit by the dock at sunset. She brought lilies with her, her daughter's namesake, and floated them on the water like prayers. The lake remained unchanged, quiet, indifferent, endlessly deep. Then, 11 years later, just when the past seemed frozen in place, the phone rang. And with it, a voice from a life she had almost stopped hoping to reclaim. It was a Wednesday morning in late June, the kind of morning where the air carries no urgency and the world feels like it's exhaling. Elaine was sitting by her kitchen window, cradling a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee, watching two cardinals flit between the branches of the maple tree outside. Life had settled into a quiet monotony these days. Retired from her last job at the dental clinic, her time was filled with puzzles, long walks, and tending to the garden Lily once helped her plant. It had been 11 years since her daughter vanished at Lake Elmore, and though Elaine's heart still bore the weight of that day like a stone in her chest, she had learned to live around it. She had stopped expecting miracles. She no longer scanned crowds or turned her head at the sound of a child's laugh. Until the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number with a Vermont area code. She let it ring twice, her hand hovering uncertainly over the receiver. She hadn't been back to the lake in nearly 2 summers. Age had made the drive harder and the memories no easier. Still, something in her gut told her to answer. "Hello," she said, her voice tentative, wary of prank calls or misdialed telemarketers. On the other end, a soft-spoken man introduced himself as the assistant manager of Lake Elmore Lodge. "Mrs. Callahan?" he asked, polite but unsure. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, but we had something unusual come up on our reservation list. I wasn't sure who else to contact." Elaine gripped the phone tighter. "Go on," she said, her voice suddenly sharper. "This morning, when we opened our booking software for the weekend, there was a name in the reservation queue that seemed familiar. It's probably a coincidence, but we double-checked it several times before calling." The guest registered under the name Lily Callahan. For a moment, the line went silent. Elaine could hear her own breathing, ragged and thin, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "What?" she whispered. "Are you certain?" The man on the other end hesitated, then continued. "It was booked online through our new portal. The reservation was made last night. Only a first name and last name entered, but the system requires ID upon check-in. We cross-checked with previous records, and, well, your daughter's name from the 2014 guest log came up. I thought you should know." Elaine stood abruptly, the kitchen chair scraping across the tile. Her mind raced. It had to be a mistake. A cruel joke. Someone with the same name. It wasn't uncommon. But in Vermont? At Lake Elmore? After all this time? It felt too precise, too eerie. The man continued carefully. "We didn't want to raise false hope, but if this is something you'd like to check out, I can flag the reservation and notify you if someone arrives." She hung up without fully remembering what she said. Her hands trembled as she reached for the photo of Lily on the mantel. 9 years old, bright eyes, red dress, her front teeth just growing in. She stared at it as tears welled uninvited in her eyes. She didn't cry often anymore, not because it hurt any less, but because grief had hardened into something solid and quiet. But now it cracked. Something stirred beneath the surface. She hadn't felt this in years. This pulse of terrifying hope, sharp and sudden. She called Tom first. He didn't answer. They hadn't spoken in nearly 4 months, only exchanging polite texts on holidays and birthdays. She left a message. Then she called Jack, now 27, working as a freelance editor out of Portland. His voice was groggy when he picked up, probably hadn't had his coffee yet. but it sharpened the second she said the name. "Mom," he said slowly, as if afraid to say more. "That can't be real, can it?" "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I'm going back." That night, Elaine couldn't sleep. She sat in the living room, lights off, television flickering in the background with some rerun she wasn't watching. Her mind was a carousel of memories. The last time Lily's small hand slipped from hers, the last time she heard her laugh, the scent of watermelon lip balm on her daughter's cheek. All of it returning like a tide, unrelenting. She felt old and foolish, daring to believe again. But she also felt something else, a tiny flame reigniting. By morning, she was packed. A modest suitcase, Lily's photo in a silver frame, and her old journal, the one she had kept in those first frantic years, filled with sketches, letters, and prayers she wrote to her missing child. She wasn't sure what she expected to find at the lodge, but something deep within compelled her to go. It was instinct, not reason. And sometimes, that was the only thing strong enough to carry a mother forward. She arrived at Lake Elmore late that afternoon. The familiar scent of pine, the shimmer of water through the trees, the sound of gulls circling above, it all came rushing back. Nothing had changed. The lodge still stood as it had in 2014, weather-worn but sturdy. A group of children played near the same gravel path where Lily had last been seen. The manager, a younger man named Reed, met her at the desk, visibly nervous. "No one's checked in yet under the name," he said softly. "The reservation is for tomorrow. 2 nights. Room 7A, one of the cabins by the woods." Elaine thanked him and settled into a nearby cabin, her heart thundering, her thoughts impossible to quiet. She sat by the window as dusk rolled in, watching every car that pulled into the lot, every guest that walked past. The lake gleamed with the same cruel serenity as before. But this time, something was different. A name had returned, and names she knew had power. They could open doors long sealed. They could stir the stillness. And maybe, just maybe, they could lead a mother back to her daughter. Elaine rose early the next morning, before the sun had fully crested over the pines, before the lake lost its shroud of mist. The quiet wrapped around her like a veil, broken only by the soft creak of wooden floorboards and the faint call of loons echoing from across the water. She brewed herself a weak cup of motel coffee and stood barefoot at the window, staring out at the gravel path that led toward cabin 7A, the cabin with the reservation under her daughter's name. 11 years had passed since that last day. Yet somehow, this morning felt heavier than any before it. Anticipation sat in her chest like a stone, pressing down with each breath. She hadn't allowed herself to believe, not really, not fully. But now that she was here, now that the possibility felt so near, her thoughts unraveled in every direction, weaving dreams and dreads in equal measure. She dressed slowly, choosing the navy blouse Lily once said brought out her eyes, then walked down to the lodge lobby to speak with Reed again. He greeted her with the same gentle caution as before, sensing the fragility that clung to her like dew. "No check-in yet," he told her. "Reservation still active. The system shows arrival anytime afternoon." Elaine nodded, barely managing a polite smile. She wandered the grounds after that, retracing old steps with a strange reverence, like walking through a memory carefully preserved in amber. She passed the spot where Lily had been playing catch with her brother. She paused by the dock, where Tom used to take them out in the rowboat after dinner. The bench beneath the white pine, where she'd last tied Lily's shoelace, still sat there, aged but solid. She sat for a long time, hands folded in her lap, watching the water shift in the breeze. Her thoughts began to drift. What if someone was mocking her? Or worse, luring her here for some dark purpose? Around 11:45 a.m., a silver Honda pulled into the lot. Elaine stood. Her heart jumped in her chest, each beat loud as thunder. She watched from the shadow of the pine tree, holding her breath. A young woman stepped out of the car, tall, lean, dark blonde hair pulled into a low bun. She was alone. She moved with the slow certainty of someone who'd been here before. She walked to the front desk. Elaine stayed frozen where she was, peeking through the branches. Reed greeted her. The woman handed over something, an ID perhaps, and signed a guest form. He pointed toward cabin 7A. She nodded and left with a key. Not once did she glance in Elaine's direction. Not once did she hesitate, as if the ground itself didn't ache with memory. Elaine waited 5 minutes before approaching. Did she give a name? She asked, trying to control the shake in her voice. Reed looked conflicted. She did, he said carefully. Same as the reservation. Lily Callahan. The name hung between them, heavy as thunderclouds. Did you see her ID? Elaine whispered. Was it real? Reed paused. Yes, he said. It looked real. Vermont State ID. Same last name. First name Lily. She'd be about, 20 now? 21, Elaine said. Her voice cracked. Reed shifted his weight. Would you like me to approach her? Ask some questions? I can say there was a system error, and we need to verify details. Elaine shook her head. No, she said. If this is real, if this is somehow my daughter, I need to see for myself. I need to look into her eyes. A mother knows. A mother always knows. She returned to her cabin and waited. Hours passed. She didn't eat. She barely moved. She sat by the window, watching cabin 7A as if it were the center of the universe. Once she saw the young woman step out briefly, dressed in jeans and a forest green hoodie, walking with headphones in, aimless and calm. Elaine's eyes followed her every step, trying to make out any resemblance. The slope of her shoulders, the line of her jaw, the gait of her stride. Was it familiar? Or was she chasing ghosts? Late afternoon drifted into dusk. The sky turned amber and lavender, and the lake caught fire with the sunset. Elaine could wait no longer. She stood, heart pounding, and stepped out into the fading light. The gravel crunched beneath her shoes as she made her way to cabin 7A, each step feeling both too fast and far too slow. She knocked. A moment passed, then another. Finally, the door opened. The woman looked surprised, but not alarmed. Her eyes, gray-green, wide, met Elaine's without recognition. Hi, she said cautiously. Elaine stared at her, frozen. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. The eyes, the nose, even the way she tilted her head. Elaine's voice caught in her throat. I'm sorry to disturb you, she managed. Your name, is it really Lily Callahan? The young woman blinked. Yes, she said slowly. Do I know you? Elaine's knees threatened to buckle. She steadied herself against the doorframe. I had a daughter, she whispered. Her name was Lily Callahan. She disappeared here 11 years ago. The young woman's face changed. Her expression, at first merely confused, shifted. Something flickered behind her eyes. A hesitation, a flicker of uncertainty. Her lips parted slightly, as if something long buried was rising to the surface. But she said nothing. Elaine took a step back. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I shouldn't have. I just needed to know. She turned to leave, heart pounding, eyes stinging. But before she could take another step, the girl's voice broke the silence. Wait, she said. Did she have a small scar on her wrist? Like a crescent. Elaine froze. Slowly, she turned around. Her voice was barely a breath. Yes, she fell on a rake handle when she was 6. The girl's face went pale. She stepped back into the doorway, clutching the frame like it was the only thing holding her up. I don't know who I am, she said, but I think you might be right. The world around Elaine seemed to tilt as the words echoed in her ears. I don't know who I am, but I think you might be right. It wasn't just what the girl said. It was how she said it, the trembling in her voice, the stunned stillness in her eyes. Elaine's breath caught. Her instinct screamed yes, yes, this is her, your Lily, your daughter, but the years had taught her caution. So many false hopes, so many nights crying into a pillow after some dead-end lead left her shattered all over again. She stood in the doorway of cabin 7A, staring at the young woman with the name and face of her long-lost child, feeling both rooted and completely unmoored. I don't understand, Elaine said carefully, her hands trembling at her sides. What do you mean you don't know who you are? The girl, Lily, stepped back, gesturing faintly for Elaine to come in. Elaine hesitated only a second before crossing the threshold. The cabin inside was modest, warmly lit, smelling faintly of pine and lavender soap. A half-packed duffel sat on the bed, next to a worn paperback and a box of tea. I only started remembering things a few years ago, the girl began, sitting on the edge of the bed. Flashes. Feelings. A blue blanket with ducks. The smell of popcorn in the microwave. A woman's voice singing, soft and off-key. Nothing made sense. The people who raised me, they never talked about anything before I was 8. Elaine's breath hitched. Before you were 8? She echoed, sinking slowly into the armchair across from her. The girl nodded. They told me they adopted me. Said I was placed with them through a closed process. I asked questions sometimes, but they always had answers. Sealed records. Foster care red tape. My real parents were gone, they said. But I never believed it. Not deep down. Elaine leaned forward. Did they say where they found you? When? The girl looked down at her hands. I was found walking alone on the side of a road in rural Pennsylvania. No memory of who I was. I had a different name then. They changed it to Lily a year later. Said I picked it myself, but I don't remember doing that. Elaine swallowed hard. Her voice, when it came, was thick. You did love that name, she whispered. You used to say it sounded like a spring flower and a raindrop had a baby. The girl's lips twitched in the faintest smile. That sounds like something I'd say. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the wind rustled gently through the trees. A loon called out across the lake, its lonely cry stretching over the water like a thread pulling time backward. Elaine reached into her purse, pulled out a worn photograph, creased at the corners, soft from years of being held. She handed it over. The girl stared at it. A child, maybe 9, smiling with 2 missing teeth, her hair in messy braids, a lake shimmering behind her. Is that me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elaine nodded. That was taken 2 weeks before you vanished. The girl studied it for a long time, her fingers tracing the curve of the smile. I've seen this place before, she murmured. In dreams. I never knew if it was real. Elaine's heart raced. Do you remember anything from that day? Anything at all? The girl closed her eyes. It's all blurry. I see trees. A red balloon. Someone calling my name, but it's not your voice. It's lower, sharp. Then water. Darkness. Silence. Her hands began to tremble. Elaine reached out, covering them with her own. It's okay, she said gently. We'll take it one step at a time. A long silence passed between them before the girl looked up again. What was she like, she asked. The real Lily. Me, I guess. Before. Elaine smiled, though her eyes shimmered with tears. You were fearless. You had this laugh that could stop strangers in their tracks. You once tried to rescue a squirrel caught in the garden netting, even though it bit you. You loved peanut butter and hated socks. You believed every rainbow meant something. The girl let out a shaky breath, part laugh, part sob. That sounds like someone I want to be. Elaine reached into her bag again and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was a silver locket, dented now, but still gleaming faintly in the warm cabin light. You wore this every day, she said softly. Your father gave it to you for your 5th birthday. There's a tiny picture of all 3 of us inside. The girl opened it carefully. Her eyes widened. That's the woman from my dreams, she whispered. And that man, that little girl. Elaine's tears finally spilled over. That's us. That's you. My Lily. The girl didn't speak, but her shoulders shook. Elaine leaned forward, embracing her, tentative at first, then fiercely. For the first time in over a decade, it felt like the earth stood still, like the silence around them was filled not with sorrow, but with the fragile hum of something blooming anew. The next morning, the world outside Cabin 7A felt heavier with meaning, as though the trees themselves leaned closer to listen. Elaine rose before dawn, the worn mattress doing little to soothe her restless body, but sleep had never truly found her the night before. Not when her daughter, the girl she'd mourned and searched for, had been just steps away in the next room. She stood by the window now, watching mist unfurl over the lake like a slow exhale. Inside, the air still held the scent of lavender and something more fragile. Hope, maybe, or the ghost of something long buried but not forgotten. Behind her, Lily stirred, groaning softly as she stretched beneath the old quilt. Elaine turned slowly, her gaze lingering on the young woman's face. Every inch of her ached to believe, to accept what her heart already screamed, but years of disappointment had taught her caution. The girl, this Lily, had a past wrapped in shadows. The only way forward now was to untangle those shadows one strand at a time. "I was thinking," Elaine said gently, her voice just above a whisper, "maybe we should go back to the spot you disappeared. See if it brings anything else back to you." Lily sat up, blinking away the remnants of sleep. For a moment she looked hesitant, uncertain. Then she nodded. "Yeah," she said slowly. "I want to go. I need to." By midday, they were winding down the narrow mountain road that had barely changed in 11 years. The summer sun filtered through the trees, casting the same dappled patterns Elaine remembered from that horrible day, though now they seemed less idyllic, more ominous, as if memory had dulled the color and left only the shadow. When they arrived at the clearing near the lake, Elaine parked and shut off the engine. For a moment, they sat in silence, the car ticking softly as it cooled. Lily stared out the window. "This place," she murmured, "it feels like I've stood here before, like I'm looking at a photograph. Only I'm inside it this time." They stepped out together, their shoes crunching softly on gravel and pine needles. Elaine led them to the water's edge, the same spot where the sand had once held her daughter's small footprints, later washed away by time and tide. "You were playing right here," she said quietly. "Your father was unpacking lunch, and I turned away for just a second to swat a bee off your brother's juice box. When I turned back, you were gone." Lily knelt by the shore, running her fingers through the wet sand. "It's strange," she said. "I keep getting these flashes. Not memories exactly, more like feelings. I hear someone calling. Not you. A man's voice, but I can't make out what he's saying." Elaine knelt beside her, heart pounding. "Do you remember anything else? Clothes? A car? A face?" Lily shook her head. "Just trees. So many trees. And a hand reaching toward me. I don't know if it was pulling me away or trying to save me." A sharp gust of wind swept across the lake, rustling the leaves above them. Lily stood and looked toward the tree line. "What's that?" she asked, pointing to a narrow path half concealed by overgrowth. Elaine followed her gaze. "That used to be the old ranger trail," she said. "We weren't supposed to go down it. It was blocked off years ago after a landslide." Without waiting, Lily began walking toward it. They pushed through brush and low-hanging branches, the trail crunching beneath their feet. It twisted through the forest like an artery, narrowing in places where nature had reclaimed what man once carved. After 10 minutes, they came upon a clearing, small, overgrown, but with signs of something man-made. "There," Lily said, pointing to a moss-covered stone well. Elaine's stomach twisted. "This used to be part of an old ranger station," she murmured. "They demolished the building years ago, but some of the foundations were left." Lily walked slowly around the clearing, her steps cautious, measured. She paused by the base of a tree. "This," she whispered, "this is where it happened." Elaine hurried over. "What do you mean?" Lily pressed her palm to the tree bark. "I remember this knot. I used to trace it with my finger while I waited." Her voice trembled. "I was waiting for someone I trusted." A chill swept over Elaine. "Who?" Lily shook her head. "I don't know, but I wasn't scared. Not at first. I think I was lured away." Elaine's chest tightened. All these years, she'd imagined scenarios: a sudden accident, an animal attack, a stranger's crime of opportunity. But what if it hadn't been random? What if someone Lily knew, someone they all knew, had taken her? They stood there for a long while, the forest around them still and watchful. When they finally turned to leave, Lily reached out and took Elaine's hand. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing in me." Elaine squeezed it gently, her voice thick with emotion. "I never stopped, not for 1 second." As they walked back toward the car, the trees whispered above them, carrying away the old silence and making room for something new. Truth, perhaps, waiting just beyond memory's veil, ready to be found at last. The days following their return to Cabin 7A passed in an odd stillness, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Elaine kept glancing at Lily when she thought the girl wasn't looking, studying every movement, every quiet word, trying to reconcile the child she had lost with the young woman who now walked beside her. There were glimmers, small gestures, familiar expressions that tore at her heart in unexpected ways. Lily's presence didn't feel foreign. If anything, it felt like someone returning home after a very long journey, carrying with them pieces that had changed shape but still belonged to the same whole. But that same familiarity also deepened the ache, because what Lily couldn't remember would have been taken from her, still hung in the air like a fog they couldn't break through. One evening, the air turning gold with the setting sun, Elaine sat on the porch steps while Lily flipped through an old photo album they had found tucked in a drawer inside the cabin. It had been left there 11 years ago, never retrieved after the chaos of the disappearance. Lily studied each page carefully, as though the faces might unlock something deep within. She lingered over one photograph. Elaine recognized it instantly. Lily at age 6, sitting on a picnic blanket, hands sticky with watermelon, laughing with her brother. That was the morning before. Elaine said quietly, her voice barely more than a breath. Lily looked up. "I look happy," she murmured. "Safe." Before Elaine could respond, a car door slammed somewhere nearby. Both women froze. Visitors were rare up here. Tourists didn't usually wander into the old campgrounds this late in the season. Elaine stood and peered down the gravel drive. A dark green pickup truck sat idling by the trees. The driver's door was open, but no one was in sight. Her stomach tightened. "Stay here," she said, her voice calm but firm. Lily nodded, her fingers tightening on the photo album. Elaine stepped off the porch and walked slowly toward the vehicle. "Hello," she called, her voice echoing too loudly in the quiet evening. No answer. Then, from behind the truck, a figure appeared. Male, mid-60s, wearing a weathered ranger's uniform. His shoulders were stooped, and a long scar traced the line of his jaw. His eyes met hers, unreadable. "Mrs. Faulkner," he said. "Elaine Faulkner?" She took a cautious step closer. "Yes." "Who are you?" He removed his cap. "Name's Boyd Keller. I was stationed here as a park ranger 11 years ago." Elaine's breath caught. She remembered the name. He had helped with the search in those first days, had even been the one to organize the grid teams that combed the forest. But he had vanished quietly once the case went cold. "I saw something in the news this morning," he said, voice low. "Said your daughter's name showed up on a reservation system. Said you came back here." Elaine nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. "I came to say something I should have said years ago," he continued. "Back then, I didn't tell everything I knew. I was scared. I made mistakes, ones that could have cost me my job, or worse. But now I think she deserves the truth." Elaine's heart pounded. She motioned toward the porch. "You'd better come inside." Inside the cabin, Lily sat up straighter as the man entered. Boyd froze when he saw her. His face changed, not with surprise, but with recognition. "My God," he whispered. "You look just like her." Elaine sat beside Lily, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Tell us what you know." Boyd took a breath. "That summer, I was supposed to be patrolling the upper ridge, but I was sleeping in the ranger tower that afternoon. I heard a report come through the radio. Someone thought they saw a man leading a child toward the old maintenance road. I didn't respond. I ignored it. I figured it was nothing, just some family hiking off trail." Elaine's hands clenched. "You didn't follow up?" "No," he admitted. "And when the call came in later about your daughter disappearing, I kept quiet. I searched like everyone else, but I never said what I'd heard. I convinced myself it couldn't be connected. But now, seeing her," he looked at Lily again. "That road led to an old shed about a mile off the main path. It was condemned, locked up, but there were ways in." Lily's voice was quiet. "Do you think that's where I was taken?" Boyd nodded. "It's possible. I went back there recently. The place is falling apart, but there were signs. A child's shoe, melted wax, old food wrappers. Like someone had stayed there for a time." Elaine felt cold spread through her limbs. "Why are you telling us now?" "Because I saw the story," Boyd said. "Because I recognized her. Because I should have told you then, and maybe it would have made a difference. But mostly because I want to help now. If you're willing." Elaine studied him. He looked worn, haunted, but there was sincerity in his voice. "Take us there," she said. "First thing tomorrow." Boyd nodded and stepped back outside, leaving the door open behind him. The sun had disappeared, and the first stars were emerging. Elaine turned to Lily. "Are you okay?" Lily stared down at the photo in her lap. "I'm scared," she said. "But I want to know. I need to know." Elaine pulled her close, holding her in the quiet. The pieces were shifting again, reshaping a story they had never truly understood. But now, perhaps, they were finally ready to face whatever waited in the dark. Morning came with a cold wind rustling through the pines, a wind that carried the scent of damp leaves and something faintly metallic beneath it, like rusted hinges or old nails exposed to the weather. Elaine didn't sleep much that night. She sat by the window, eyes fixed on the woods, listening to every creak and snap in the silence. Lily had fallen asleep against her shoulder hours ago, her breathing deep and steady, but Elaine couldn't let herself rest. There was a weight in her chest, like something vast and unknowable had settled there. She was afraid, not of what they would find, but of what Lily might remember when they did. Sometimes the truth didn't set you free. Sometimes it built its own kind of prison. By 8 o'clock, Boyd's truck rumbled into view, dust trailing behind it. He stepped out wordlessly, holding a thick manila folder under one arm and a heavy ring of keys in the other. "It's about a mile off the old utility road," he said, nodding toward the north side of the campground. They stopped using it in the late 90s. Too remote, too many maintenance issues, but the cabin's still there. Lily stood beside Elaine now, wrapped in a wool sweater, her eyes alert but unreadable. She didn't speak. She hadn't said much since the night before. Elaine placed a gentle hand at the small of her back. "We're ready." They followed the truck in Elaine's car, the road narrowing with each curve, gravel giving way to broken asphalt, and then to dirt pocked with tree roots and mud. When they finally stopped, the forest seemed to close in around them, dense and uninviting. The air smelled thick with moss and pine needles. Boyd led them down a narrow path choked with brambles and old vines. Birds scattered from the treetops. After about 10 minutes of walking, the trees suddenly opened into a small clearing, and there it was. A sagging, moss-covered cabin with boarded-up windows and a half-collapsed porch, like a wound forgotten by time. "This used to be a supply station," Boyd said quietly. "Then a place for overnight shifts to rest. But after a flood ruined the foundation, they shut it down. Never officially decommissioned it. Just left it to rot." Elaine felt a shiver trace her spine. The place looked more like a crypt than a shelter. Boyd approached the door, fumbling with the key ring. After a few tries, there was a rusty click. He pushed the door open. The smell hit them first: old rot, mildew, and something else, something dry and earthy like dust sealed behind time. They stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath them. Sunlight filtered through a gap in the roof, casting long diagonal beams that shimmered with dust motes. Elaine's eyes adjusted slowly. The room was small, maybe 12 by 15 feet. A rusted cot sat against one wall, its mattress torn open and spilling yellowed stuffing. In the far corner, a child's shoe rested beside a rusted lantern. On the table in the center of the room, wax had pooled into a hardened lake, remnants of candlelight long gone cold. There were food wrappers shoved into the corner, decades out of date. But it wasn't just the debris that chilled Elaine. It was the feeling, the overwhelming stillness, like the cabin itself was remembering. Lily stepped forward slowly. Her fingers brushed the tabletop. She traced the wax lines as if they were ancient runes. Then, she turned and walked to the wall opposite the cot. There, her hand hovered over a set of faint scratches etched into the wood. Elaine joined her, squinting. Letters. No, initials. LF carved deeply, as if someone had pressed with everything they had. "Lily Faulkner," Elaine whispered. Lily nodded, her voice trembling. "I think I did that." Elaine turned toward Boyd. "Why didn't anyone find this back then?" He rubbed the back of his neck, ashamed. "Because we didn't look here." "Not really. We were told the place was off-grid, dangerous. They assumed no one would bring a child here. And when the media frenzy hit, resources got pulled in every direction. This place just got buried." His voice cracked slightly. "I should have insisted. I should have checked. Elaine stepped closer. Did anyone live here recently? Boyd shook his head. No evidence of squatters. I checked the logs. No ranger assigned here since 2008. But someone came back. Look at this. He pulled a photo from the folder. A crime scene image he had taken 2 days prior, before deciding to come forward. In it, a newspaper dated 6 months ago sat on the same table. It was folded, the edges crisp, untouched by the damp. Someone brought that here. Recently. Elaine stared at the image. Then maybe they're still coming. Lily stood still, her eyes vacant. Then, suddenly, she sat down on the cot and let out a soft sound, almost like a hum. Elaine moved to her quickly. Lily. The girl didn't respond, her gaze fixed on a broken beam above. Then she spoke, slowly, as if pulling words from underwater. There was music. He played it on a tape. Over and over. Something old. It made me feel sleepy. Like floating. She closed her eyes. There was a blue cup with stars. I drank from it. She began to shiver. Elaine wrapped her arms around her. It's okay. That's enough. Boyd knelt nearby. She's remembering, he said softly. This place, it's part of her. Elaine looked at the initials on the wall again, then at the cot, the wax, the shoe. The truth had left its marks here, worn and hidden beneath layers of silence. They had peeled one layer back. But what lay underneath? That was a different question entirely. The drive back from the cabin was quiet, save for the sound of gravel crunching beneath the tires and the occasional gust of wind brushing against the windows like a whispered warning. Elaine kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching Lily in the back seat, her gaze turned toward the window, her expression unreadable. She hadn't said much since they left the cabin. Only that single phrase from before echoed in Elaine's mind like a bell. There was music. He played on a tape, over and over. What kind of person did that? And why would music be the thing that returned to her first after all these years? When they returned to the lodge, the sun was dipping low over the tree line, casting golden streaks across the lake surface. Elaine made Lily some tea, chamomile with a bit of honey, and they sat together by the fire. Lily wrapped herself in a blanket, knees tucked to her chest. Boyd had left to make calls and see if anyone else in the department might recognize the cabin or recall anything similar from old reports. But Elaine couldn't shake the feeling that the answers weren't going to come from anyone official. They were buried somewhere inside Lily, and it would take more than questions to bring them out. I remember the song, Lily said quietly, without preamble. Elaine turned, her breath catching. You do. Lily nodded slowly. Not all of it, but parts. It was old. From the 60s, maybe? A woman singing. Soft. It played every night. Same song. I think he liked it. Or maybe he thought I did. Her voice trailed off, eyes distant. Sometimes I would pretend to sleep, just so he'd stop looking at me. But the song kept playing, like a lullaby that never ended. Elaine reached for her phone and typed a few words into a music app. Let's try something, she said. She searched for vintage songs sung by women, played in the style of soft folk or old-time country. Do any of these sound familiar? She played one, then another. And then, on the 5th try, Lily's eyes widened. A slight gasp escaped her lips. That's it, she whispered. That's the song. The music floated softly through the room. Where Have All the Flowers Gone by Joan Baez. Elaine turned the volume down and watched Lily closely. Do you remember anything else when you hear it? Lily closed her eyes, her brow furrowed. Then she spoke, slowly. A room. It had wallpaper, yellow flowers. Peeling. There was a metal bed frame. A tiny lamp with a cracked shade. The music came from a black radio on the dresser. I wasn't allowed to touch it. She opened her eyes. And there was a window, but it was boarded up from the outside. Elaine's heart thudded. That doesn't sound like the cabin we saw today. Lily shook her head. No, it wasn't the same place. It was smaller, smelled like kerosene and old blankets. Her fingers gripped the edge of the blanket. There was a sound, trains. Not close, but I could hear them sometimes at night. Elaine rose and went to the small desk by the window. She pulled out a notepad and began writing everything Lily said. Every detail mattered. We'll cross-reference old rail lines near abandoned cabins, she murmured. There can't be that many. Lily looked down at her hands. I think he called it the Quiet House. He used that name. Said it was a place for secrets. Said the woods protected it. A chill ran through Elaine. The Quiet House. It sounded like something from a nightmare, like a place made specifically to disappear into. She paused. Did he ever call himself by name? Lily flinched, and for a moment Elaine regretted asking. But then Lily nodded. I think he told me to call him Mr. Harvey. But I don't think it was real. I remember hearing him on the phone once. He used a different name. Patrick something. Patrick Hall, maybe? Elaine's breath caught. Now, they were getting somewhere. The door creaked open. Boyd stepped in, face pale. You're not going to believe this, he said. I ran the list of recent reservations again, back farther. Turns out, someone by the name of Patrick Hall made multiple bookings at small motels near here in the last year. Always under different names, but the phone number stayed the same. And one of those places? It's half a mile from an old switching station, rail lines still active. Lily's face drained of color. That's it. That's where it was. Elaine stood. Can you take us there? Boyd hesitated. We need a warrant to enter anything private, but I could get us close. And if it's abandoned, you didn't need to finish. Elaine turned back to Lily. Are you sure you want to do this? Lily didn't hesitate. I have to. As night fell again over the trees and the lake, they gathered what they could, flashlights, jackets, a camera for documentation. Elaine took one last look at the song still paused on her phone screen. It was a strange thing, how music could endure where memory faltered. And yet here they were, chasing ghosts drawn forth by a melody. But maybe, just maybe, that song would lead them all the way to the truth. The drive to the outskirts of town was cloaked in an eerie silence. The sky painted a deep indigo as stars began to prick the darkness. Boyd navigated the narrow country roads with practiced ease, the car's headlights cutting through the thickening shadows. Lily sat in the back seat, clutching a worn photograph she'd drawn from memory earlier. The yellow floral wallpaper, the cracked lampshade, the metal bed frame. Elaine watched her quietly, her mind swirling with anticipation and fear. The Quiet House wasn't just a figment of a child's imagination. It was real, and it was waiting for them somewhere out here. As they neared the coordinates Boyd had found from the motel records, the landscape grew sparse, trees thinning to reveal rusted railroad tracks glinting under the moonlight. A faint whistle echoed in the distance, a train winding its way through the night, just like Lily had described. They pulled off the road onto a dirt path, the tires crunching over loose gravel. Up ahead, nestled between gnarled oaks, stood an old, weather-beaten cabin, its once yellow paint chipped and faded to near invisibility. The windows were boarded, just as Lily had said, but a cracked radio antenna still poked through the roof like a forgotten sentinel. Elaine felt her pulse quicken. This was it, the Quiet House. They stepped out cautiously, flashlights sweeping across peeling wallpaper visible through a broken window pane, the familiar pattern of yellow flowers stark against the dilapidated interior. The air smelled thick with dust, damp wood, and a faint trace of kerosene, exactly as Lily had remembered. Boyd approached the boarded window and pried a loose board free, revealing a room frozen in time. On the dresser sat a black radio, the dial worn smooth from years of use. Elaine's fingers trembled as she reached out to touch it. Suddenly, a faint sound caught their attention, a static crackle followed by a soft melody drifting through the night. The radio, though powered by an unseen source, seemed alive. It played the same haunting song Lily had recognized, Where Have All the Flowers Gone? The tune filled the room like a ghostly lullaby, wrapping around them with an almost unbearable sadness. Lily's eyes welled with tears as she stepped closer to the radio, whispering, "He never wanted me to leave." The music was his way of holding on. Elaine's heart ached. This was more than a place. It was a prison of memories, both for Lily and the man they called Mr. Harvey, or Patrick Hall. They searched the cabin for anything that might offer clues. A worn notebook with scribbled notes, faded photographs of strangers whose faces blurred with time, and a small box containing letters, some unsigned, others with cryptic initials. None mentioned Lily directly, but one letter, yellowed and fragile, was addressed to the quiet girl, with a date stamped 11 years ago, the day Lily disappeared. Boyd radioed for backup and to check records for any reports matching this location. As they waited, Lily sat on the creaky floor, running her fingers over the floral carpet that had once been vibrant but was now threadbare. Why did he keep me here? Was I his prisoner? Or was he trying to protect me? Her voice cracked, the weight of unanswered questions pressing down like a suffocating fog. Elaine knelt beside her, holding her close. We're going to find out, Lily. Whatever it takes. Minutes stretched into hours as they combed the property. Behind the cabin, near a collapsed shed, they discovered a hidden trapdoor buried beneath leaves and dirt. Boyd's flashlight revealed a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The air that rose was cold and musty, carrying the scent of forgotten secrets. Elaine's breath hitched. This must be where he kept the tapes, she said. Where he made the music. One by one, they descended, flashlights piercing the gloom. The basement was a cramped cellar, walls lined with dusty shelves, and in one corner, an old tape recorder sat atop a wooden crate, tangled wires snaking across the floor. Elaine carefully lifted the recorder and pressed play. The room filled with crackling static before the familiar melody emerged again. Where have all the flowers gone? But this time, beneath the song, a faint voice whispered. It was Lily's voice, soft, trembling, but unmistakable. Help me, the recording said. Please, don't forget. Elaine's eyes brimmed with tears. The truth was no longer buried in shadows. It was alive in this tape, echoing across the years, pleading to be heard. Boyd called it in, knowing this discovery was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. Lily stood, trembling but resolute, ready to face whatever came next. The quiet house had finally spoken, and they were listening. The dim light of dawn crept through the cracked windows of the cabin as Elaine, Boyd, and Lily emerged from the basement, their minds weighed down by the haunting voice that had whispered from the tape recorder. The fragile recording, Lily's own voice, was a chilling echo from a past neither Elaine nor Boyd had been fully prepared to confront. The reality settled in their hearts like cold stones. This was no longer just a missing persons case. It was a story of survival, of a stolen childhood, and of secrets buried deep beneath years of silence. Back at the local police station, the tape became evidence, a fragile lifeline to the truth. Detective Marcus Grayson, a veteran investigator who had followed Lily's disappearance from the start, listened intently as the crackling message played over the speakers. Help me. Please, don't forget. The words hung in the room, heavy with pain and desperation. Marcus leaned back, his usual stoicism giving way to a rare moment of vulnerability. This changes everything, he said softly. We're dealing with someone who kept her alive all this time, in captivity but hidden from the world. Elaine spent the next hours combing through the letters and notes found in the cabin, piecing together fragments of a twisted relationship between Patrick Hall, the man who had taken Lily, and his fractured psyche. The letters hinted at remorse, a desperate need for redemption, but also revealed his paranoia, his fear of being caught, and his strange fixation on protecting Lily from what he called the outside world. Elaine's heart ached as she read lines written by a man both monstrous and broken, trapped by his own demons as much as he had trapped her. Meanwhile, Lily was quiet, her thoughts drifting to the years she'd spent inside the quiet house. Memories surfaced unbidden, the lullabies sung in the dark, the constant hum of the radio, the fleeting glimpses of her captor's softer side. Yet beneath the gratitude for survival was a deep, gnawing sorrow, a childhood stolen, innocence shattered. I don't know who I am anymore, she confessed to Elaine one late afternoon, her voice barely above a whisper. But want to find out. With Marcus's help, the investigation took a new direction. They reviewed old police files, cross-referenced Hall's known associates, and revisited witness statements from the day Lily vanished. Every detail was scrutinized, searching for the missing pieces that could explain how Hall had eluded capture for so long. The discovery of the reservation list, the one that bore Lily's name, was revisited with fresh eyes. It was a clue, a breadcrumb that had lain hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to follow it. Elaine's resolve deepened with each passing day. The years of fear, the countless sleepless nights, the endless woofs, they all culminated in this moment of reckoning. Lily was home, but the road ahead was long and uncertain. Healing would not come easy, nor would answers be found without pain. Yet, amid the chaos, a fragile hope blossomed. A hope that the truth, once uncovered, would finally bring peace to a family shattered by loss. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elaine sat beside Lily, watching the stars blink awake in the vast American sky. "We'll take it one step at a time," she promised, squeezing Lily's hand gently. "Together, we'll find who you were meant to be." And as the night deepened, a quiet strength settled between them, an unspoken vow to face whatever ghosts the past still held, and to reclaim the future they both deserved. The reservation list, once overlooked as an inconsequential detail, now lay at the heart of the investigation. Elaine pored over its faded pages in the police station's cramped evidence room, each name carefully cross-referenced with the database. The list was from a small, rustic bed and breakfast nestled near the quiet house, an establishment owned by an elderly couple who had been neighbors to Patrick Hall many years ago. The revelation sent ripples through the team. If Lily's name was on that list, it meant she had been booked under an alias, or perhaps someone else had reserved a room for her. The question was, who? Elaine arranged to meet with the owners, an aged pair named Martha and George, whose memories were foggy but honest. They recalled a strange man, tall, reclusive, visiting there infrequently during the summer years. Always alone, always quiet. He never mentioned a child. Martha said, her voice trembling slightly. "But sometimes late at night I thought I heard a girl singing, soft and sad." George nodded, eyes distant. "We didn't ask. Some things are better left alone." Their confession deepened the mystery. Was Patrick Hall hiding Lily in plain sight, behind a veneer of normalcy? Meanwhile, Detective Grayson uncovered financial records linked to the reservation. The payments had been made using a prepaid card, untraceable to any bank account, and the handwriting on the booking form was unfamiliar. Elaine's mind raced. Was there an accomplice, someone aiding Hall in this elaborate concealment? The layers of deception thickened with every discovery. It seemed the story behind Lily's disappearance was woven with threads of secrecy, trust betrayed, and calculated silence. Lily herself began attending therapy sessions arranged by the police department, opening the door to memories long buried. Each session peeled back fragments of her captivity, the routine, the small kindnesses shadowed by fear, and the overwhelming loneliness. She spoke of a hidden room with yellow wallpaper, the constant hum of the radio, and a man who was both captor and guardian. Yet, despite her trauma, a spark of resilience shone through. "I want to remember everything," she told Elaine one afternoon, "even the things that scare me, because maybe that's how I'll understand who I really am." Elaine's own nights were restless, haunted by visions of her daughter trapped in that silent house. She clung to the belief that each piece of evidence was a step closer to uncovering the whole truth, but doubt crept in. How much more had been hidden all these years? The reservation list had opened a door, but behind it lay a labyrinth of secrets. The weight of that realization settled heavily on her shoulders, a burden she bore for both herself and Lily. One evening, as Elaine reviewed the documents again, a name caught her eye, one that matched an old acquaintance of Patrick Hall, a man with a criminal record linked to fraud and kidnapping. Could he have been involved? The possibility ignited a new urgency in the investigation. They were no longer chasing shadows. They were closing in on a network that had kept Lily captive. The reservation list was not just a record. It was a key to unlocking a dark past, and Elaine was determined to turn it. With renewed purpose, Elaine, Boyd, and Detective Grayson prepared to confront this new lead, knowing the answers they sought might finally bring closure and justice. But as the walls around them seemed to close in, one truth became clear. Some secrets refused to stay buried forever. They clawed their way back into the light, demanding to be heard. The investigation led Elaine, Boyd, and Detective Grayson to a rundown apartment on the outskirts of town, a place long forgotten by the casual eye, but deeply etched in the shadows of Patrick Hall's past. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and stale smoke as they approached the door, hearts pounding with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Inside lived Marcus Wynn, the man whose name had surfaced on a reservation list and whose criminal record suggested a tangled connection to the web of deceit surrounding Lily's disappearance. It was time for answers, no matter how painful they might be. Marcus opened the door reluctantly, his eyes flickering with a guarded hostility. He had lived a life marked by regret and paranoia, trying to bury the past beneath layers of silence. But confronted by Elaine's unwavering gaze and the weight of years spent searching for her daughter, the walls he had built began to crumble. In the dim light of the cramped apartment, the truth spilled out in fractured pieces. Admissions of involvement in schemes that had enabled Patrick Hall, moments of complicity and cowardice, and hints at a deeper, darker network that had orchestrated the concealment of Lily's existence. Elaine listened, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, sorrow, and relief. Every word brought her closer to the reality she had feared yet longed for. Marcus spoke of secret meetings, coded messages, and false documents, the machinery of deception that had trapped her daughter in a world of shadows. It was a betrayal not only of law, but of humanity, a betrayal that had stolen over a decade of Lily's life. Boyd's fists clenched as the pieces fell into place, the quiet rage of a father awakened after years of helplessness. Yet amid the revelations was a glimmer of hope. Marcus revealed locations and contacts that had remained hidden, clues that could finally lead them to the truth of Lily's captivity and possibly others who had suffered similar fates. The names were dangerous, people who thrived in the darkness and feared exposure. But with the police now fully engaged and the evidence mounting, the balance was shifting. Justice was no longer a distant dream. It was within reach. Meanwhile, Lily's transformation continued. The therapy sessions, the interviews, the slow unveiling of memories, all contributed to a fragile rebuilding of her identity. She began to reclaim pieces of herself that had been buried beneath fear and silence, drawing strength from the love of her parents and the courage that had carried her through the darkest days. Elaine watched her daughter with a bittersweet pride, knowing that the road ahead would be difficult but resolute in her commitment to walk it alongside her. As the days passed, Elaine found solace in small moments, a shared smile, a quiet evening by the fireplace, the gentle reassurance of family. But the confrontation with Marcus Wynn marked a turning point. The past was no longer an unyielding prison, but a landscape of truths to be navigated and ultimately healed. The pieces were coming together, fragile but firm, promising a resolution that had once seemed impossible. The investigation now focused on tracing the network that had kept Lily hidden, a pursuit that demanded courage and vigilance. Elaine understood that this journey was about more than finding answers. It was about reclaiming a life stolen and rebuilding a family torn apart by tragedy. The coming days would test their resolve, but the flame of hope burned brighter than ever. And as night fell over the quiet town, Elaine whispered a prayer into the darkness, a prayer for justice, for healing, and for the future her daughter deserved. The weeks following the confrontation with Marcus Wynn brought a surge of energy and determination to the investigation, a relentless push into the dark corners of a secretive network that had thrived on deception and cruelty. Elaine found herself at the epicenter of this unfolding storm, her resolve steeled by years of unanswered questions and silent suffering. Every new lead peeled back layers of lies, revealing the intricate machinery that had ensnared her daughter and many others like her into a shadowy underworld. Detective Grayson and Boyd worked tirelessly, piecing together connections that spanned states, tracing coded communications, and identifying individuals who had operated behind the scenes to hide Lily's existence. There were moments of triumph, arrests made, false identities dismantled, safe houses raided. each victory a hard-won battle against an insidious system built on fear and silence. Elaine stood firm throughout, her presence a beacon of unwavering hope and fierce maternal love. She attended briefings, offered insights gleaned from Lily's memories, and lent strength to the team when weariness threatened to overwhelm them. Lily herself grew stronger with every passing day, her trauma slowly giving way to resilience. The therapy sessions, once an exercise in dredging up pain, became a journey toward healing. She found solace in telling her story, in reclaiming the pieces of her life that had been stolen. Elaine watched as her daughter transformed from a frightened captive into a young woman determined to forge her own path. There were setbacks, moments when the weight of the past threatened to pull her under, but those were met with a steadfast love and unwavering support that began to stitch together the fabric of a new beginning. In quiet moments, Elaine reflected on the cruel irony of the reservation list, the small piece of paper that had ignited this extraordinary chain of events. It was a symbol of both the darkness that had engulfed her family and the light that now shone at the end of a long, painful tunnel. She knew that justice was not only about punishment, but about restoring dignity and hope to those who had suffered. And as the truth emerged, it carried with it the promise of closure and the possibility of peace. Yet the scars ran deep. The public revelations stirred whispers and memories within the community, reopening old wounds and confronting neighbors with uncomfortable truths. Some offered support, others recoiled in denial. Elaine understood that healing would be a collective process, one that demanded honesty, compassion, and time. She resolved to be a voice for those who could no longer speak, to ensure that Lily's story, and those of countless others, would not be forgotten. As the investigation drew closer to a resolution, Elaine and her family prepared to face the future with cautious hope. They were no longer defined solely by loss, but by the strength forged in adversity. The journey that had begun with a desperate search in the wilderness had transformed into a quest for justice, understanding, and renewal. And as the final pieces fell into place, Elaine felt a profound sense of gratitude, not only for the reunion with her daughter, but for the resilience of the human spirit that had carried them through. The reservation list, once a mere footnote in a forgotten case, had become a testament to the power of persistence and love. It was a reminder that even in the darkest shadows, there is a path to the light, if one has the courage to seek it. Elaine knew that while the road ahead would still hold challenges, she and Lily were no longer alone. Together, they would face whatever came next, bound by a love that had survived time, silence, and unimaginable pain. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains of the small but cozy house Elaine and Boyd had prepared for Lily's return, a sanctuary carefully crafted not just of walls and furniture, but of hope, patience, and unwavering love. After 11 years of anguish, uncertainty, and silent prayers, the moment of reunion was finally at hand. The neighborhood, once a quiet backdrop to a shattered family, now hummed with a tentative anticipation, aware that a life once lost was about to be reclaimed. Lily stepped into the home with cautious steps, her eyes wide, absorbing every detail. The worn quilt her mother had stitched, the family photos carefully arranged on the mantel, the scent of fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. It was a place both strange and familiar, a physical manifestation of the life she had missed and the future she was beginning to rebuild. Elaine reached out without words, and Lily embraced her, a connection forged in the deepest valleys of loss and renewed with the purest threads of love. The days that followed were a delicate dance of rediscovery. Simple routines became milestones, sharing meals, walking in the garden, conversations that unraveled years of silence. Elaine and Boyd learned to listen anew, honoring Lily's pace as she navigated memories, both painful and precious. Therapy sessions continued, now infused with moments of laughter and glimpses of the bright spirit that had always lived within her. The scars of captivity did not vanish, but with each passing day, they softened under the warmth of family and the promise of healing. Community support blossomed around them. Neighbors offered kindnesses both small and significant. Home-cooked meals, invitations to local events, gentle smiles that conveyed a shared sense of relief and solidarity. Elaine, once isolated in her grief, found strength in this network of compassion, understanding that recovery was not a solitary journey, but a communal embrace. Together, they honored the courage it took to confront the past and celebrate the resilience it inspired. The legal battles continued quietly in the background, as authorities worked to dismantle the criminal networks exposed by the investigation. Marcus Wynn and his associates faced justice, their lies unmasked and their power broken. Elaine's voice became a steady force in advocating for victims' rights and reforms designed to prevent future tragedies. She spoke at community forums and support groups, transforming her pain into purpose, determined that no other family would endure what hers had suffered. As the first anniversary of Lily's return approached, the family planned a celebration, not just a commemoration of survival, but a joyful affirmation of life, love, and new beginnings. Friends and neighbors gathered, sharing stories, laughter, and tears. Lily's eyes shone with a quiet confidence, a young woman who had reclaimed her place in the world and who carried within her the unbreakable spirit of a family united against all odds. Elaine often reflected on the strange path that had led them here, from a mysterious reservation list to a reunion that once seemed impossible. It was a testament to the power of perseverance, faith, and the enduring bonds of family. Though the shadows of the past would always linger, they no longer held dominion. Instead, they served as reminders of the strength born from struggle and the hope that guides us through even the darkest nights. In the stillness of the evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the house settled into a peaceful quiet, Elaine sat beside Lily, hands entwined, hearts connected. They spoke softly of dreams and plans, of a future no longer defined by loss but by possibility. The journey had been long, the wounds deep, but here in this moment, surrounded by love and light, they found the true meaning of home. Thank you so much for joining me on this emotional journey, a story of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Your time and attention mean the world, and I truly hope this tale touched your heart as much as it did mine while sharing it with you. If you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss out on more heartfelt stories just like this one. Don't forget to like the video. It really helps support our community, and I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or even your own experiences. Let's keep this conversation going and build a space where stories and feelings can be shared openly and warmly. Your voice matters, and together, we create something truly special. Thank you again, and I can't wait to connect with you in the next video.